welcome back to an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. As everybody knows, this week, no Alan Saunders. So once again, this might be the first time it's 3 in a row, though, Nick. Nick Farabaugh joining the show, my pilot again. How we doing, Nick?
Yeah, we're doing well, man. Obviously, we got some news today, man.
Yep. I'm stunned
It's
by
not
this
like
one.
like yesterday we were like cobbling together questions from you guys. No,
Yeah.
today we talk fifth year option decisions because two of them for the Steelers.
hmm
Najee Harris's contract, the fifth year was turned down by the Steelers, and so was Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, the Fields one is the one that stuns me. I'm surprised that the Steelers didn't want to pay him $25 million without seeing him play in their offense at all. No, but seriously, we knew that one was going to be turned down. Going back to man, the days run together. Yesterday or the day before, we had a conversation about would it be interesting to approach him about a contract extension before the season, maybe like heavily incentive based. Say he does become the starter in 2025, but we knew the fifth year option, was not going to be picked up by this team and pay him that salary, that guaranteed salary for 2025. But Najee Harris is the one that I think we were both on the same page. We're like, we expected it to be picked up, less than $7 million on the option. Obviously been super durable. How much do we talk about, and does Tomlin talk about availability being the best ability? And he has certainly been available in his time here. And I'll be honest, like, even though obviously early in his career, even independent of the offensive line, he did not get off to the best start from an efficiency standpoint. But like everything that he battled through during those times, again, going back to the durability and stuff that I mentioned, like it's pretty surprising that he's been as healthy as he has been, or stayed on the field, I should say. Not obviously healthy, he's played through some things, but stayed on the field through these circumstances for them. And got dropped into a really bad situation. They basically drafted him in the first round and said, "You're fixing our run game. We don't care what the offensive line looks like. You are going to fix this run game on your own." Obviously, wasn't necessarily able to do that. But yeah, Nick, I'm a bit surprised here that we're having this conversation about the Steelers declining his fifth year option. We knew we were going to be talking about his fifth year option. I thought we were going to be on the other side of this.
I think the longer it went on, the likelier this became. They pick up fifth year options pretty early on when they're very certain about it. Now it's not completely out of the woods that they won't extend him. They extended Terrell Edmonds, really in free agency, so they have turned down options before and brought guys back. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the past few picks now, man. I mean, we can go back to all the way really to Jarvis Jones. I mean, it's a rough group, man. I mean, Shazier obviously was a hit before his injury, but Bud
Yeah.
Dupree, had his late career breakout. Artie Burns is in there. Devin Bush is in there. They didn't have a first in 2020, obviously, but this
Yeah, I
is
mean, since TJ in 17, they've all been pretty
yeah,
questionable.
they've all been declined, right? So, um, since TJ, yeah, they've all been declined. It's not been a great hit rate among the first round picks over the past decade or so. So it's I think Najee was the toughest one because this is a good player that plays a position. The running back market, man. I mean, he wouldn't have been getting paid a premium. I mean, 6.79 million is 12th most in the NFL. It's not an expensive contract for a running back. They had a lot of cap space, but I think it came down to three factors. And I think one, Najee's going to be 27 when he hits free agency. So for Najee, this is great, actually. Najee Harris, some people might be looking at it and he might take it as a sign of disrespect. He might, but he also should probably look at it and say, dude, I get to hit free agency at 27 years old instead of 28. I think that is
Mhm.
significant for him on
Yeah.
the free agency market. So Najee might be able to get a better deal on the market. If I were Najee Harris now, I would hit the market and look what I can get just because that's where probably running backs are going to get their best deals. Um, but I think, for the Steelers, it was one, he's going to be 26, and he's only going to be older, 27. There's been a lot of tread on his tires through
Sure.
Alabama and, his first year. They've slowed it, they've kind of waned it back a little bit with Jalen Warren coming on. But we know with these running backs just how quickly the drop off is. Look at how quickly Dalvin Cook went from elite running back to where he is
hmm
now. It happens quickly. The Steelers maybe didn't want to lock in 6, 7, 6, 9 million guaranteed, and they might be worried, is he going to fall off this year? I think That's concerning. I think two, the fit within the Arthur Smith offense is questionable. It's not that he can't run wide zone, but I think Jalen Warren clearly fits the wide zone runner profile better. Are they going to mix in gap concepts where he can, mix it all in and everything? And then I think three, listen, man, I think Omar, and Andy Weidel, they're guys. I know that publicly they haven't really gone super into analytics, but Omar and Andy Weidel are two guys that are
Hmm.
more inclined to that side of the deal,
Absolutely.
and they know that there's a huge value risk with running backs. Like if Omar Khan and Andy Weidel were, if they were here in 21, I don't think the pick would have been Najee Harris. So I think that they also represent opportunity cost. So I think that's really where we're at. It's kind of a wait and see. If Najee has a really good year, I can definitely see them bringing him back. I don't think the door's closed on an extension. I don't think they'll extend him this summer. I think they're going to wait and see what kind of is. But I think personally, those are the reasons. But I don't know, Smitty. I don't really know if I agree with it. I get that there's opportunity cost to running backs, and he's got a lot of tread on his tires. But you don't find guys this durable with the situations he's had, where I think there's still a lot left juice to squeeze with Najee Harris. I really do think, he could have a big year this year with probably the best offensive line he's been behind.
Yeah, I like the point that you said about Omar and Andy, just from like a positional value standpoint. Don't think they would have drafted this player because of the position that he plays in the first round. And I don't think that that's them saying that he's not a good player. I just think that maybe they feel like, okay, we feel like we can find what he brings at a cheaper cost. And whether I agree or disagree with that, I think that that's probably how they feel. I think that if we haven't seen them go out and try to find another obviously a bell cow back up to this point. But do they feel like they can do that somewhere else in the draft? We had a brief conversation. I just asked you about it, about the 2025 running back class, which they could very well dip
Very
into
good.
as well. Yeah, on paper, it looks like it's going to be very good this
Yep.
time when we're having a conversation in a year. But like the other aspect of this to me, and you mentioned maybe they want to see him in this offense. That is what Jerry Dulac alluded to, is they want to see Najee Harris in Arthur Smith's offense before making a decision about his future with the team. And I fully get that, but to your point with like the juice that's left to squeeze out of him, and I hate saying this about a player, but just like looking at him from as a football player, as an asset standpoint, that's why I would have picked up the 5th-year option, gotten this year and next year out of him, and then probably, unfortunately, just because of the way that I view the position, wipe my hands clean and
Yep.
look for another back at that point. Like you get the 2 years out of him, cost controlled, without giving him like a long-term extension, because you don't know how he's going to age. And then you look for somebody else to replace him and maybe also go along with Jalen Warren if you see him as part of the future, which I do.
Well, listen, they're going to have to pay one of these running backs.
Right, yeah, Warren is
Jalen
you
Warren is
you
a
just put out a
restricted.
post. Yeah, you
Right.
put out a post right before we
Yeah.
started recording here. I mean, the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Pat Fryermuth, James Daniels, and all the receivers besides Calvin Austin and George Pickens set to be free agents after this year. Now, of course, Jalen, as you just mentioned, is an RFA, not a UFA. But Nick, that's a lot of potential turnover on one side of the football.
Yeah. And you're going to want to sign one of Najee or Jalen Warren long term. So there's going to be a running back contract coming at some point. um, in the next year, more than likely. Here's what I think, though. If Najee has a great year, and I fully expect that to potentially happen, I think we don't just talk about what he can do. I think what over the last 5 or 6 weeks, he had probably his best 5 or 6 week stretch,
Hmm.
really. I mean, he
Hmm.
was cooking. When they went to the gap schemes, I think he was really at home, physical downhill, hit the hole, was able to get after contact stuff. Like, I love the dichotomy of Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. They're so different from each other. I think it's a great one too. But they're gonna have to decide what they want to do if he has a good year, because
Yeah.
here's the thing. Najee has been very outspoken about the running back market,
Right.
about how disrespected
Hmm.
that group has been. I don't know if the Steelers would be the type of team under Omar and Andy to tag him if that came down to it. I don't know if they would. Um, but I mean, we could be on a collision course here for contract dispute if that happens. So I don't know. He's going to have, he's going to, if he had a great year this year, that 6.79 would look, or I think 6.97 actually would look great compared to, okay, he has a great year and now maybe you're going to have to pay him 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, it's happened before, right? Where a player has had their option decline and then they end up getting tagged. But what does the tag look like? Because I don't know what like the salaries are going to look like next year. But like, how much would they be losing there in terms of value as opposed to just having picked up his option? And if they tagged, like, what is that difference? Because they could come out of this looking really dumb for not picking up the option and then tagging him after the
So
season.
the projected franchise tag, and this isn't obviously certain yet, is 13.35 million.
Yeah.
So that's a
So
lot.
yeah,
Um,
I do not see a route to that happening regardless of the year that Najee Harris has, to be honest
yeah,
with you.
I generally agree with that. Jalen Warren, the projected tenders,
Mhm.
depending, I'm assuming that they would probably give him at least a second round tender, so a team wouldn't be willing to swoop in on him.
Mhm.
That would cost 5 million. A first round tender would cost 7 million. So, I mean, Jalen Warren's going to be making a nice bag too next year, more than likely in some respects. So,
Yeah.
this position group is interesting. Cordero Patterson is the only player in that room under contract for 2025. And it's kind of interesting. I think right now, I think we can definitely profile running back in as one of the needs that they're probably going to have to fill in
Yeah.
that offseason. But Najee, I mean, would they pay Najee and give Warren a tender? Probably, but I think that's a 2-year thing. I think you would probably sign Najee for like 2 years, and see how that goes. But I really think, personally, and I'm with you. I wasn't even in favor of picking Najee Harris in 2021. I thought they
Sure.
needed a lot more than a running back. I know they were trying to patch it together one last time for Ben, but I didn't really see how the running back kind of did that. It wasn't the player. I think Najee's a really good player, and I thought he was a good player coming out. It was, how does he help you win a Super Bowl one last time? When
Mhm.
the O line is gaping holes, and I think to a degree that's proven true. Najee's helped them win games. There's no doubt, but he hasn't gotten them over that hump. And the offensive line that they're building right now, I think, could do that very soon. So I don't know, man. I think declining Najee Harris's 5th-year option, to me, it's really questionable because I think we saw him at his best down the stretch last year and what he can be, and that's a very effective, efficient running back. He was an efficient running back. I mean, there was no way around that. That he became a very efficient running back. I also think he has a ton of passing game upside that they have not used. Arthur Smith uses a ton of 2 running back sets. Jalen
Yeah.
Warren and Najee Harris and Cordero Patterson, those 3 guys, they're going to be on the field in some packages together this year. I think the year one Najee Harris we saw, where he was such a great check down option and
Yeah.
outlet out of the backfield, the past 2 years has just
What did he catch, like 60
evaporated.
balls that year or something?
Yeah, and it's just evaporated the last 2. And I think there's just a lot of upside with Najee Harris, and what he kind of brings to the table. But hey, like Omar and Andy Weidel very well might be a believer in this is a fungible position. They found Jalen Warren as a UDFA, and they might feel like they can find another guy. And the Steelers have done
74
this
receptions,
now
actually.
2 straight times with their running backs, right? I think
Mhm.
inadvertently they did it with Lev Bell. I think they wanted to keep him, but they
Yeah.
essentially let him walk for James Conner, and then they let James Conner walk, and Najee came in. And so that's kind of where it's been. And so it's possible they might just follow that model again.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point in terms of talking about Najee Harris with like the wide zone stuff. Like, how's he going to fit into Arthur Smith's offense? I just wonder how you weigh an improved offensive line along with maybe not the greatest fit schematically. Like, where does that fall? So, like, okay, maybe Jalen Warren is a better fit specifically for this offense, but we also haven't gotten to see Najee Harris with this type of offensive line talent yet. So, like, how do you weigh what you're losing in one area into what you're gaining?
Yeah, I don't know. Najee's never going to be this explosive back. Long speed's always going to be his issue, but he's a powerful, efficient back that gets. I look back to that Seattle game where he just pounded that team. I mean, one thing that if you're going to roll people, as Mike Tomlin put it, having a back like Najee Harris, like it really does pay dividends. And then you have Jalen Warren too. Both these guys just hit like trucks. Like they just smack guys. I mean, they legitimately wear defenses down. Najee Harris just gets extra yards. He always falls forward. He became an efficient back this year. I thought his vision took leaps and bounds this year. I thought he started to really press the line and hit the hole and read his blocks better. I really liked what he was doing down the stretch. So, I mean, wide zone's a little different because you do need that one cut burst. Obviously, we know Jalen Warren has that. That is something that he has. He is an explosive one cut back at his best. So he'll fit in this scheme well. But Najee, most of the time when Najee's at his best, it's those pull schemes where he just takes it downhill right behind a guy and smashes the linebacker or safety.
Mhm.
So if they're planning to fully go wide zone, I don't even think it's the best fit for their offensive line. I think they have such talented pulling tackles and guards that they should be doing that regardless. But if they're planning to go, play Arthur ball, which they might want to play Arthur Smith ball, then yeah, I think Najee's not the prototypical wide zone back that you would think. Derrick Henry obviously worked in that scheme, but Derrick Henry is an absolute freakazoid with his speed and athleticism and his size. But I'm interested to see kind of how Najee ends up doing it. Because if they can give him space, he can take that wide zone and cut it and go. I mean, they can essentially function as those pull plays. So I'm
Mhm.
interested to see if he can get to the second level, kind of how he works there. He's not the prototypical wide zone runner, but in the past, I'm pretty sure he's done it pretty well. So if he can really do that for a full season, I think he can have a really good year. I think that they pit themselves in. The Steelers are going to have a lot of transition next year on the offensive side of the football. They really are.
And I feel like they have a lot of transition this year. So like you're talking
Yeah.
about is like we thought 2024 they were going to look a lot different, and they are going to look a lot different. But like, are they even going to have 2 consecutive years of a largely same group, or is there going to be just again that much turnover?
I think we've seen Omar Khan and Andy Weidel have a want to turn this roster into their roster. A lot of guys have gone out. Colbert signings, draftees.
Mhm.
Obviously, you have your mainstays, but I mean, they've made a stamp on this team as to how they want to build it. There's no doubt about that. And next offseason feels like their biggest chance yet. I mean, you look at it, man. Najee Harris is a free agent. Pat Frymo's a free agent. All those wide receivers are a free agent outside George Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, of course, too. James Daniels is a free agent. On the defensive side of the ball, Ogunjobi has what 2 years left on his deal. I know that's a con deal,
Mhm.
but that one feels like probably unlikely to go past this year. Cam Hayward's deal runs out. I mean, Elan Roberts' deal runs out. It's gonna be big time transition next year. Dante Jackson will be a free agent. I mean, they're gonna have holes all across the team that they're gonna have to fill. So I imagine there's gonna be some sort of extension for one or two of these guys this summer. I think there has to be. There's too many free
Yeah.
agents. They have a massive amount of cap space. They really do. So you want to talk about an active offseason next year? Dude, they have a chance to be the most active team in free agency next year with the holes that they will probably have paired with the money that they will have to spend at all the positions. So this really only sets that up even more. And Najee Harris, I don't know. He could be among those. I'm very
Yeah.
intrigued to see how they kind of divvy out this offensive plan. I don't know who they would extend first. My gut would be Muth or Daniels. That's my guess. Probably Daniels, right? If they're building that offensive line, you would think if you're going to focus on the trenches, he would be the one guy to extend first.
I think so. Without saying too much, might be a conversation that we could have down the road. this summer about one of those. But Nick, every time that something like this happens, it's like I try to figure out both sides of it, like the case for and the case against. And I assume, like I said at the beginning of the show, that we were going to be having a conversation about this being picked up. I think that we've made arguments as to why we thought it was going to be and are a bit surprised by it. But in your mind, what is the case for the Steelers not? Like, if you are trying to rationalize this decision for the people watching or listening to this show, why do you think that the Steelers came to this decision that they did?
Yeah, again, I think it's, they want to put their stamp on the team. One, I don't think this regime values the running back position as much as Colbert did, for example. I also think that they're a little bit uncertain of his fit in a wide zone scheme. I think that's another part of it. So they really are kind of evaluating it from different sides. But I mean, Philadelphia has not paid running backs very often. They brought in under Harry Rosen, they brought in DeAndre Swift last year, but Miles Sanders walked. They spend high enough draft capital on that position, but generally with Andy Weidel there, they had not spent a bag on a guy. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how that all plays out, but I think that's part of it. I just think Con and Weidel really also probably weren't very enthused with some of those drafts, man. I mean, you look at the turnover from this team. I mean, the first round picks from, Terrell Edmonds is gone. Devin Bush is obviously gone. Chase Claypool is gone. I'm just naming first picks from each draft. Najee Harris had his option decline. Kenny Pickett was traded. I mean, you really can't get any more putting your stamp on it when the guys that the previous regime spent high draft capital on are now gone. So that's part of this. I do think, though, as we talked about, I do think he was cost efficient, and I probably would have kept him around. But maybe what they're going to do is, I still think the far likelier outcome here is Warren takes over as the lead back in 25, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what this feels like to me. Warren and a draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Jalen Warren gets an extension next summer. I mean, I could see that.
I would think so. Again, like it's just wild to me looking at all this potential turnover and like throwing all these scenarios at the wall, like how many different directions that this thing could go. Because if someone asked you right now, like, what is this offense going to look like in 2025? What is even your answer for that?
Good. You don't have a quarterback. You don't, the running back, you can guess at 50-50 chance, I guess. You're going to have a need at starting right guard, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows what the receiver room is going to look like, right? Like, okay, tight end. I mean, is Muth going to be around? I don't know. And again, we even talked about it. It goes to the defense too, man. I mean, the D line's
Mm-hmm.
going to probably be an overhauled unit. The corner room's going to have to be overhauled too, probably to a degree. Like, it's going to be a big overhaul for this team. I really believe that. So this year, I think when we talked about urgency, there's clear urgency to win this year because all these guys are coming in, and a lot of them, might not be back after 2025. So there's a reason they have a lot of cap space next year because they have all these free agents. But I think, with Omar and Andy, they want to make a stamp on it. I think it's becoming clearer and clearer.
Berg Sports Fan on YouTube saw the vision here. He saw into the future. I don't know if it was a crystal ball that he's got or what, but in the comments he said, I assume Najee Harris's 5th-year option is going to be exercised, but say that it were to not. How do you think that the running back room shakes out?
Whew. Saw it,
Yeah, so
huh?
they're asking for a prediction. That's funny that they said if it were to not. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, listen, right? The Steelers, man, have become smart and pragmatic about some of this stuff too. That they weren't going to guarantee Najee Harris that money without knowing if he was a good fit for what Arthur Smith wants to do. And I guess we don't really know what Arthur Smith wants to do yet. I mean, he ran like 40% mid zone and like the lowest amount of gap runs in the entire NFL. Maybe that comes more into play here. Like maybe the Steelers don't even fully know what Arthur Smith is going to do in that run game and if he fits or
Yeah.
not. So I think that's probably a huge part of this. Listen, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are both good players. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to how they perform and how they fit in this scheme and how they fit into this personnel and how everything kind of works around them. So that's going to be a big factor in all this. It's just there's a lot of turnover that's going to be coming in 2025. There's no doubt about it. There's so many free agents. And I mean, you look at the 2021 class and the past few free agency classes, man. I mean, those were supposed to build your team to winning a playoff game. So you hope that this all pays off, but it's pretty clear that Omar Khan and Andy Weidel aren't taking anything for granted. Um, they're being extra cautious here, which is it's an interesting approach, but I do think that Najee has so much upside and is a good player. And so when you get in a cost effective good player, I just feel like that opportunity cost personally is too much to pass up.
Um, yeah, so the last thing that I wanted to ask you, and I feel like we've kind of touched on this, it's about Omar and Andy, but is that all it is, or is it like, do you think maybe there's been some philosophical change, or is it just because those two are at, the helm now? Like, how much input does Tomlin get in this decision to decline Najee Harris's 5th-year option, in your opinion? Like, just from a franchise organizational standpoint, the structure of it, the philosophical idea here, because I just feel like with past regimes, like say Colbert was still in charge, I think this gets picked up, but he's not, and it's declined. So what has changed there? Is it just Omar and Andy, and then like goes down because of the way those two view the game differently now than past regimes?
I'm sure that's part of it. I also think Colbert, because of how long he was tenured there, had significant power over what happened. Not that Mike Tomlin obviously doesn't. He did, and he still does. But I also think Tomlin now, as the senior man, gets a little bit more wiggle, right? He's a revered head coach in the NFL, so he's going to have a lot of say. And Mike Tomlin, man, I don't think he fully, in some of these press conferences, I don't think he fully lets on some of what he thinks. I think he's a little bit more analytical than probably a lot of you would think he is. That doesn't mean he uses like, oh, he's like an EPA per play truther. Like he's not
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Staley, right? Who was like all into this to the point where it actually was a detriment. But he references like these niche stats that are fairly clearly into that mold. So I think it was a team decision, and I don't think Mike Tomlin objected to it, which is interesting because Mike Tomlin's been only anything but complimentary to Najee Harris. But I do think, if Colbert's here, this is picked up. So I think it speaks to the kind of influence that Omar and Andy can have, but I also think it probably speaks to Mike Tomlin being a little bit more flexible than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I thought that this would be picked up. I probably, like, if it was my decision, would have picked it up again, gotten these 2 years out of him, and gone from there, and maybe reset at the position at that point, or not reset, but you have Jalen Warren and somebody else to kind of replicate what Najee was bringing to the offense at a cheaper rate. But
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it plays out.
I mean, it's kind of interesting too because Travis Etienne's option was picked up.
Yeah,
Just one
one pick later.
one pick later. That's kind of interesting. But I'm kind of looking, I just want to kind of take a big, just kind of preview real quick of free agent running backs next year. And
Hmm.
it's kind of interesting, right? Um, because obviously Najee's now in there, but you have, James Conner is in there, Aaron Jones. Then you have Najee Harris, of course. Nick Chubb's a free agent next year. Um,
Hmm.
it's not like a great class on the top. It doesn't look like a great class to me of free agent running backs, but the depth of the running back position in the draft is extremely deep. Um, you talk about how weak the running back class was this year. Going to be talking about it in the complete opposite way next year. It really is
Yeah.
going to be like an inverse next year, from what I've heard. D line is stupid deep, so
Hmm.
is running back. So quarterback is not as deep, and the top might not even be great. Like it's kind of interesting when you take it into that account. So Najee, is going to be one of the best free agent running backs on the market next year, and if he hits the market, he's probably going to get paid decently. Um, so again, if I'm Najee Harris, I know that the team that drafted you just declined your 5th-year option, but he knows what he's done. He's run for 1,000 yards 3 straight years. He's healthy. He's durable. He's a good player. I
Hmm.
mean, hitting the market for a running back 1 year earlier than you would is big. It's big for him.
Yeah,
So this is a big
absolutely.
chance for Najee too, from a personal perspective, to hit the market and really get, you know, his pay. I don't. I would be very interested to see what a theoretical not if let's say Najee does what he did this year again.
Hmm.
One maybe he gets 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns and 4.2 yards per carry, somewhere around there. Be very interested to see what he gets on the market. Um, it could be. I don't think it's going to be Saquon level, but 8-9 a year sounds about right to me, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I
Absolutely.
mean,
And that's a great point about, him getting an extra, and I don't think that he's the type of guy that needs to have a chip on his shoulder, but I mean, he's certainly now he's going into a contract year, which maybe he wasn't expecting to have. So,
Najee is very business savvy and thinks about things in a league wide spectrum. He knows what the running back market is. He
mhm,
knows that it's a dried up market. Um, he knows. And so if he gets to hit the market at 27, I mean, that's significant for him because he's going to become one of the highest paid running backs if he hits the open market. I'm fairly certain about that. And he's gonna unless Jalen Warren's gonna cost less than him. He is. And the numbers right now say that Jalen Warren is more efficient. Obviously, he has less of a workload, but that's what they say. The Steelers might just take that to the bank. It's very possible that's what happens. And I would have picked it up, but for
mhm.
Najee, I mean, I'm not, 6'7", 6'9", 7", guaranteed is nothing to scoff at. But let's be real here. He might get more in the open market.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm interested to see how it plays out. Great conversation, Nick. Basically, the entire episode about Najee Harris. I'm proud of us for getting this much content out
It's
of
there's
one.
too many angles to this. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that there are so many free agents, he's gonna be at the epicenter of the running back market next year. I mean, he's gonna be the guy that is gonna be at the center of this conversation next year. It's a conversation we have every single year about these running backs. He's gonna be at the center of it. And he's gonna be one of the true guys that I think, you don't see a lot of these guys that are good running backs not get tagged. He's probably going to be one of those guys that is a 4-year contract and can hit the open market and really see what he can get. So it's a unique position to be in. And the Steelers are in a
Mhm.
unique position because of the turnover they're going to have just all
Absolutely.
across this. The new regime's going to really have a chance to just really bulldoze everything if they want to. Um, and I'm just interested to see because that starts right now. Again, we were talking about those summer
Yeah.
extensions. I mean, Highsmith, Minka, Deontay, all these guys have been signed. Before training camp, early training camp. So we don't know if there's extension talk happening right now with someone. I would bet there is probably an extension coming with somebody. It's just
Yeah.
who in the world is it? Between
If I had
Danielson.
to, yeah, I would say if I have to guess predictively, I'm going to guess James Daniels is the first domino to fall there.
I would guess too, but I would not be surprised if it's Fryermuth either, because I do think they value what Fryermuth brings.
We will be, by the way, Pittsburgh Steelers now will be the ones to break that news when Pat Fryermuth signs an extension, just so everybody knows. So
Yes.
that's why you need to have your notification bells on everywhere.
Yeah, that's why it all needs to happen, man. It's going to be like a really crazy season because the urgency is felt with their offseason moves, but brother, they can sweep this thing completely clean next year and just go different from here. It
Yeah.
could be a crazy year, even crazier than what this year was, and that was crazy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this is just another storyline. Like this just adds the intrigue to me to the 2024 and now 2025 seasons. But we will be actually I'll be here Nick, you're not on here tomorrow. I know Derek's on here with me.
Yes.
Is it just Derek and I?
It's Derek coming on. Yes.
DB on the show tomorrow. So, Nick, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter X at Farabaugh FB. Make sure to read stuff over at SteelersNow.com as usual. Make sure to hit the like button, comment below, notification bell, and of course subscribe to the Steelers Now YouTube channel. We got great stuff coming. We got rookie dates finally. Rookie minicamp is happening on the 10th and the 11th. So next Friday and Saturday, and we'll have obviously videos from there, press conferences, first looks at Corey Falatanu, Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, all those guys.
There you go. It costs absolutely $0 to do the best thing that you can do to support this channel, which is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, as Nick said. So be sure to do that. Comment down below. Share the episode with a friend that is a Steelers fan. You never know who is going to be interested in catching an episode of the Steelers Afternoon Drive. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH, on all my socials. If you are listening somewhere else that is not YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever that might be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there as well. Also, everything can be found in the link tree, which the link to that is in the description to this as well. So you know exactly where to find us on every platform. So that's good stuff. But until tomorrow, with Steelers DB, Derek Bell, my boy, going to be on the show with me tomorrow. Catch us then. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.